Have you ever wondered why Nigeria has never had a government that came into being through credible, free, and fair elections? Let's take a trip down memory lane. Nigeria attained her independence from colonial Britain in 1960. For the greater part of the 50 years since then, Nigeria has had difficulty achieving a credible electoral democracy. Our first attempt at an electoral process was the post-independence government of Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. The second attempt was in 1979 when Alhaji Shehu Shagari became president.
Federal Republic of Nigeria.
That as President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
That as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
I will discharge my duties.
I will discharge my duties.
To the best of my ability.
To the best of my ability.
Faithfully.
Faithfully.
And in accordance with the Constitution.
And in accordance with the Constitution.
Those two elections were neither free nor fair, but as a young nation, it had hoped that with maturity, Nigerians would rise to the challenge of building a strong electoral system that would produce political leaders in free, fair, and credible electoral contests. Unfortunately, that hope has remained largely unfilled to this day.
Elections during come, Obasanjo plan them very well. Him take all politicians, we rule Nigeria before. Disable politicians, we spoil Nigeria before. Obasanjo carry all of them they there now.
Perhaps the only free and fair election was the MKO Abiola elections.
And we want MKO.
Who's MKO?
Abiola.
And they scuttled it.
General Babangida to walk on any street of Nigeria with me without security and see how long it will take people, before people actually lynch him. That is the type of leader that Babangida is.
Then we had another opportunity to do it right. This time in 1999. The elections that brought in retired General Olusegun Obasanjo. And then again in 2003, Obasanjo's re-elections. Both were rigged. Think we had enough? No. In 2007, they did it again. It was rigging galore. Nigerians once more went to the polls, but the election that brought in Alhaji Musa Yar'Adua and Dr. Goodluck Jonathan only succeeded in repeating the fraud and manipulations witnessed in the 1999 and 2003 earlier elections of Obasanjo and his PDP administration. Now, in 2011, we are about to go to the polls once more. What's it going to be? This is Tunji Lardner. He's Executive Director of West African Non-Governmental Network, Wangonet. A while back, Lardner and his team stumbled on some interesting figures. Interesting, questionable figures concerning the number of polling booths as published by Nigeria's Independent Electoral Commission, INEC.
Our curiosity was based on the project how the elections were rigged. We were curious about how the 2007 elections, which probably go down in history as the worst elections we've had, by all accounts. And so it was really how did they do it? It wasn't just enough to say the elections were rigged. There must have been some kind of a methodology to it. And so, very basic, start with the numbers. We're trying to figure out how many people voted, where they voted, and we suddenly quickly realized that there was this magical number of 120,000 polling stations scattered around Nigeria at the point at which people were supposed to vote. And to each one, they ascribed a value of about 500 voters. But what set my own interest was, why was it 120,000? Why was it not 111,405? It just seemed too neat a number. And then we decided, okay, let's look at the database, look at the record. So we went to the INEC site, and we discovered there were some anomalies there. Primarily the fact that you couldn't see the entire database itself. You couldn't see a full list of it, so that if you made an inquiry about XYZ local government, in a particular state, it will show you that. And if that was the basis for your inquiry, you'd be satisfied. But as we dug deeper into the actual data set, we realized that that XYZ number, or that XYZ polling unit or polling station, was actually mentioned about 40 times.
The Wangonet investigation of the ghost polling booths must have tickled the curiosity of Mr. Lardner and his team. They decided to go several steps further, conducting some serious research on electoral malpractice in Nigeria. What they came up with was mind-boggling. The Wangonet research initially revealed 5 salient points that stood out in election rigging. Basically, the numbers game, the role of the security agencies, the role of the politicians, the role of the INEC, and the role of the citizens. We heard about the numbers game earlier. Let's now move on to the issues of security. The Nigerian security forces have been accused of complicity in the issue of election malpractice, from being illegal bodyguards of corrupt politicians to actually running off with ballot boxes. The stories of police involvement are widespread. Innocent Chukwuma, Executive Director of CLEAN, throws more light on the issue of state security apparatus vis-a-vis electoral fraud.
We don't have really a police force that is democratic or that uses the strategy of democratic policing in doing this work. What we have is a police force that is based on regime policing philosophy. And what do I mean by that? Is a philosophy of policing that emphasizes that the police do whatever government in power tells them to do, as opposed to democratic policing, where they are accountable to multiple constituencies, including the law, the parliament, the executive, and of course, the people. So when you have a police force that performs or works under an environment where the government tells it basically what to do, and that government, especially those who are running it, are themselves candidates in an election, you can only guess what will happen. And you also have a section 9.5 of the Police Act that vests operational control of the police on the president. And your guess is as good as mine, the kind of operational control a president who himself is a candidate in an election will be given to the.
It would seem the police are not the only state apparatus found wanting in the discharge of its duties. Another niggling issue in the quest for credible electoral processes in Nigeria is the performance or non-performance of the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC). The body is saddled with the responsibility of executing credible elections has in recent times been seen to be guilty of partiality, illegalities, and other forms of dubious conduct in the carrying out of its duties.
Justice Wise reports on reforming the electoral process is a good document, right, that addresses some of these issues, like you said, right? Instead of the INEC commissioner being appointed by the president, it was supposed to be appointed by the Judicial Council, I think, and widespread consultation. There had to be a process. But the incumbent government did not want that, and they appointed a person of their own choosing, right? And so we have now focused intently on this person. I said this person can single-handedly deliver good elections. And I think it's an unfair set of expectation to burden Professor Jega with, because he is working within a system. And that system is working within a larger system, i.e. the Nigerian system. So whatever happens in INEC and the way INEC chooses to operate, succeed or fail, is really a larger indictment on the larger society. But somehow we expect that INEC will be separate and apart from the dynamics of the larger society. It's extremely difficult to do that. But which does not in any way exculpate INEC, right? They've made a lot of mistakes in my own estimation, and a lot of people are thinking about that too publicly. And we can only hope that we know they're doing their best, however, but the question is, can they button down all the logistical challenges that would enable us to guarantee that the 70 million plus voters who registered over the last 2 months will actually cast their votes, have those votes recorded in a safe manner, open and transparent manner, and that the results will be, that the results when they're released will be acceptable, will be credible, and will be subject to international standards.
The Nigerian political class is not left out. They, more than anyone else, are seen as the true beneficiaries of election malpractice. Why do they go to such great lengths, most time violent and immoral, just to acquire and cling to power? Adewale Ajadi, the executive director of the Equality Foundation, is a seasoned lawyer, economist and public speaker. He tells us where we have gone wrong as citizens in our quests for free and fair elections.
Two things that you have to bear in mind. Most Nigerians are indigenes, they're not citizens. They're born in this country, they have a sense of entitlement, but they're not brought up to take responsibility for, own their country, and determine or help to determine what standards of behavior are acceptable. If you ask 99% of Nigerians what's in the Nigerian Constitution, they don't know what it is. If you ask them what their rights and obligations is, they don't know. In fact, they should not, because if you pick the Nigerian Constitution, it's a dense, largely unreadable document if you're not a technocrat or a lawyer. Why should that be the basis of citizenship? So, I can reel off the reasons. Do you understand? But that doesn't mean there are no solutions, even at the state that we find ourselves in. It is going to be difficult to have 100% free, fair, all of that elections. The challenge is to have an election that is credible enough, fit for purpose, and actually reviewable in objective and transparent terms.
And so, with so much research under its belt, Wangonet, obviously not satisfied with the status quo with respect to Nigeria's electoral practices, hooked up with other proactive entities, such as the British government's Department for International Development, DFID, group partners, and the Equality Foundation. Together, they all embarked on a journey to figure out how not to rig an election. With DFID picking up the tab and group partners utilizing its cutting-edge solutions platform known as Visual Thinking, Wangonet and Equality Foundation organized a stakeholders forum in which they invited 120 bright, forward-thinking individuals cutting across different professions, gender, religion, and so on.
This initiative which we are funding is a very innovative one, first of its kind, in terms of trying to see how ICT will be able to enhance the electoral process in Nigeria. DFID as an organization has serious interest in eliminating poverty, and we know that violent elections over time in Nigeria is the root cause of poverty in this country and conflict. So if we're able to attack the root causes of electoral malpractice in this country, we believe we are going to meet our objective of eradicating poverty in Nigeria. This is quite innovative, like I say, and the outcome of this is going to create an opening for possibly further support post-2011 election. Up until we get the outcome, I mean, we're not very sure of what next, but we're very optimistic that something good is going to come out of this initiative.
The DFID Wangonet Forum began with the registration and accreditation of the delegates, after which Mr. Lardner officially welcomed everyone. John Caswell, ably assisted by Adewale Ajadi and Aisha Osori, were the navigators of this very unique journey. John first broke down the entire process as drawn on the Great Wall for the delegates, listing out the 9 basic phases of the electoral system.
This discussion and what you see on the wall is as good as we can make it. No matter where on the planet, in every country, everybody has problems with elections, everybody has problems with government, everybody has problems with processes. This is no different. So 9 phases: announcement, registration, nomination, campaigning, pre-voting, voting, collating, counting, declaration.
Being a very interactive session, the delegates were quite eager to give their views and observations on the 9 listed phases. So we began with the announcement phase.
In the Nigerian context, what happens is that disorder is embedded into things like this. The element of disorder and distortions embedded in this stage 1 announcement are appointments. Hidden inside appointments are funds allocation and budgets. For this year or last year, it took us all of 3 months to announce the head of the INEC. But while the delay was on, people were hiding funds and people in the structure. These are the booby traps that later on manifest in failure. So we have a catch-all word that says appointments come before the announcements. But here in Nigeria, those appointments have become an event all their own.
Then we move on to the registration.
On our table here, we've identified a few issues that has to do with the registration aspect. And then one of them is actually on the issue of poor and inadequate equipment. You know, when you talk about registration and then the facilities we're using are not up to standard or they're not adequate to be able to attend to the number of people that we have in mind, then there's a gap there. Then the second one is actually on the issue of personnel. Human resources we're using, are they actually equipped enough? Are they actually trained to be able to offer that kind of service that we demand, that we require of them? And then the last one here is the issue of undue interference by the government on the process. Like you have, we've heard of cases of situations where certain places are being deprived of that registration. The personnel are not even allowed access to such areas, and then these people have to go in other areas to be able to register.
Which is followed by nomination.
One of the significant places we are looking at there is the lack of party democracy. Please, can you put the word internal there? Lack of internal party democracy. And then we are looking at some other issues as intimidation by party supporters.
And then campaigning.
Issues we've discovered lack of security at the venue of the campaigns, especially like the Port Harcourt Stampede. The use of the imbalance in reportage by media houses of the campaigns.
Followed by pre-voting.
Polarization of voting centers. Because at the pre-voting stage, a lot of people feel that, okay, this is my constituency. Obviously, anything that goes, I can influence the way the voting of one at that center. Then the second thing has to do with this insecurity of the voting materials to be used. A very recent example is the DDC materials. Just at the airport, the following day, At the international airport, the following day, some machines were missing, and this is very critical. Then lastly, there is a need for us to ensure that there is last-minute awareness about the votes.
And then, of course, voting.
Problems we envisage in voting processes include delayed arrival of voting materials, intimidation of voters by political talks, inadequate provision for physically challenged voters, intimidation of other political parties' agents by the ruling party or the most popular party in that locality, and we have party agents and others who take advantage of illiterate, illegible voters to sway their votes to wherever they want it.
And collating.
We have multiple voters registration. By this, you have people registering twice. Again, we have hijacking of ballot box. And again, illegal changing of polling units.
And finally, counting.
Attempts by the prominent party to score to counting. Overzealous security officials may cause confusion. Intimidation and compromise by party education. Lack of desire by voters to protect their votes. And finally, nervous counting can lead to wrong figures.
Before the declaration.
Integrity of the returning officer at this point, because we find out that most times people get the correct results, and when it comes to their table, it takes the level of sincerity of such a person who is made the returning officer to come to bear at this point. You know, it takes somebody who is accountable, who is credible, who has integrity to actually say, I'm announcing the correct result, I'm announcing the right result, I'm not influenced by anybody, you know, to make me announce the wrong result.
Having identified the real shortcomings of our electoral processes, our delegates went on to proffer a series of solutions to these shortcomings.
We advocate for sponsorship of independent polling agents because most of these political parties, they do not have enough money to spread polling agents at the 120,000 polling units. And where some of them sparsely able to present sums, you pay a polling agent 1,000, AMPP pay 5,000, and PDP come and say 50,000. And they become susceptible to manipulation. So we are advocating that the donor agencies in Nigeria, because Nigeria's situation is a peculiar situation that they deserve peculiar approach. The donor agencies should draw polling agents from credible organizations such as Nigeria Labour Congress, NBA, and other credible bodies, and finance them to become independent polling agents.
The solution, one of the solutions I'm going to make now is that if you watch that clause that was given to elected bodies, let's say the governors in the state, that immunity in them, they have it as an influence over the agencies, like security agencies in the country. If it could be possible, a day or 2 days to election, let all the commissioners of police be reshuffled in the whole country. I think it will be difficult. It will be a bit difficult for the governors to penetrate them easily and then do whatever they want to do.
It is high time. As a Nigerian, we have to begin to test our constitution and existing law instead of sitting and complaining. I believe with what we've had on ground, if we begin to test our constitution and begin to test our existing law, we move forward in quick time.
The level of social awareness should be raised among Nigerians for them to know their rights, and they should be willing to fight for their rights.
So, solutions have been proffered by our delegates. Let's listen to some final words of wisdom.
Societies that fail are the ones that fail to hold their elites accountable for their misdeeds. We have consistently failed to hold our elites accountable for their misdeeds. We keep doing the same thing over and over and expect different answers. So really it's not, I don't blame Nigerian politicians for being avaricious and predatory. Well, why wouldn't they? Because there's nobody to stop them. nobody checks their behavior, nobody cautions them. So we go through this little ritual every 4 years. We just pretend as if we're going to vote. They come, they do their little campaigning stuff, and we give them a mandate, and they go off to wherever they go off to, and pillage the system. And then we sit back and complain, oh, those people, oh, that political party, oh, those people from this particular ethnic group, oh, those people from that, oh, that woman, oh, that, all those. But we ourselves, as individuals, have failed to take responsibility for our own respective actions.
Well, primarily because we focus on the election as a transaction. We don't figure that the election is just part of a broader system that does not start when the election is announced. That's one thing. We're very transactional. The second thing is that we have often assumed that the failure of our elections is an issue of morality, immoral people, corrupt politicians, and all of that. And because we look at it on a very simple level, we don't see the complex mix, including those things, that makes them dysfunctional. And the third thing is the failure of organization. We are not interested in looking through the system and setting standards and processes across the system as a whole, as an holistic system of electing people that will make sure that we are able to know quickly and enough when something is not working.
Well, essentially is that the Independent National Electoral Commission would have to resist the urge to be used by the incumbent if they are willing to play their own role according to the book, which they have started doing, because something that came out of their retreat within this week, which is this modified open ballot system, which ensures that the voters should gather within a period of time to be accredited and come at another time to vote. And anybody who doesn't come within that time will not be allowed to vote. And once the voting is concluded, it will be counted, results declared, and duplicate copies given to the representatives of the political parties and their candidates. What Nigerians appear to have forgotten, that was the same process that ended June 12th. So what it means is that the serious-minded parties, especially within the opposition group, who have the resources to deploy genuine and credible party agents, not those who will go to the field and be bribed or bought over by the opponent. They can at least ensure that if they get those results and tabulate them, it's as credible and as official as the one that may be released.
People have developed so much apathy because they discover that when they vote, their votes never count. So there is apathy. And this initiative will say how not to rig election. Apparently, we showed interest because at the end of the day, whatever the outcome is, we are very, very optimistic that it's going to create an opening to see where else an intervention can be done in order to see that we have a very close to perfect electoral process in Nigeria.
If we want this country to move ahead, let us translate most of our fora or conferences and workshops into practical realities. Let us implement, for the good of our society and for generations yet unborn, so that we will leave a legacy. Society, one generation comes, another takes over. So if we can, for the sake of oncoming generations, put these things into practice, I think Nigeria will be the better for it.
At the end of this very important and unique journey, most, if not all, of our delegates endorsed the resolutions of the forum by appending their signatures on a special part of the wall. It would be great if we all endorsed these resolutions by following the new and improved guidelines proffered at this forum. This can only set Nigeria on the road to free, fair, and credible elections. And so, at the end of it all, we are better enlightened. We now know how not to rig an election.